Hey everyone, thanks for joining. I have a really exciting show for you today. I have someone I met at a local real estate meetup whose story really inspired me. I'm like, I got to get that guy on the show and ask him a bunch of questions. So let's welcome Ty to the show. How you doing today, Ty?
Doing awesome. Thanks for having me, Michael.
Excellent. Well, Ty, do me a favor. I know a little bit about your story, but the audience doesn't. So who is Ty? Where do you invest? What do you do in real estate?
Cool. Thank you. So my name is Ty. Last name is Leon Guerrero, and I am a investor, but I'm also a real estate broker. I live in the San Francisco, Oakland, East Bay, and I've been a real estate professional for 25 plus years. And so part of my business is brokerage, where we do regular listing sales. We've always kind of had an emphasis in investor type properties and distressed properties and such. And then the other part of my business is investing. So I've had a lot of rentals. I've done a little bit of infill land development, owned large apartment buildings. But the thing I really love about real estate is, I love the ability for freedom. Obviously, I'm in a t-shirt today. The fact that you can kind of write your own ticket, the harder you work, the better you do. You'll see the fun coupons there behind me, that image. We don't idolize, any one person or whatever, but the idea is that we all work hard for freedom and for fun coupons. So to have fun with our friends and family and loved ones. Thanks for having me on the show, Michael.
Excellent, Ty. That's awesome. Really, what I wanted to get you on this show is because both of us have been investing for 20 plus years, which means just by math that we were on the other side of this historic crash that we saw in '07, '08, which is important because I see so many people that have been crushing it for 5 years that have no idea what could be coming. So I love talking to people that have been in the game for 20 years. So thanks for agreeing to do this.
Absolutely.
So I always go back with every guest to, okay, tell us about why you got started. What did that first deal look like? I mean, 25 years ago, that was in the 90s, right? That was like 95, 96.
Yeah, absolutely. Early 90s, actually. I was going to junior college. I had like a little lawn business and mow, blow, and go, and just I had a full-time job as a groundskeeper working for a college, and I was also taking classes and probably working toward like a business degree or something like that, and trying to figure out my way. But I kept seeing a pattern. Even as a young kid, I can remember being with friends and seeing like their dad. Hey, what does your dad do for a living? You guys got big house, nice cars. Oh, my dad's in real estate. My dad owns real estate or something along those lines. I could kind of see the patterns. And so, for me, I was always a pretty good saver as a young guy, even in high school and even as a young man. So I'm 21 years old. I've got, I'm doing some landscape work, also, a little side business and, shoebox and saving money. And I bought my first rental in 1993.
Wow.
To give you an idea. I bought a house for 102,000. I thought I was getting a home run because the one around the corner was like 115, right?
Yeah.
So I thought I was just like, oh, this is great. I painted it myself, did the roof. Me and my grandfather, my cousin's grandfather, like my grandfather, we did the roof on it. And it was just, I knew I'd read a book, the Robert Allen, Nothing Down for the 90s.
Yeah.
And so I kind of knew that real estate was going to be my pathway.
That's awesome. So first off, a couple of things that I preach on this channel that you had early, and I didn't discover until I was 30. You were a saver as a young man. Where did that come from? Was that just ingrained in your family? Did you just luck out and that's who you were? But living below your means is so key to breaking free and getting going in this. I'm just curious where that came from.
As a young, not necessarily from the family, but, growing up, for me to, get, junior high school, to have nice clothes, things like that, I had to work, and little side jobs and side hustles and things like that. But I just figured out, hey, I need to save my money and, and then I can do something. I want to get a car, right? When we're 14, 15 years old, you want to get a car. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to put this money away and let me see if I can find an old car I can buy. So it just kind of in that nature, I was always kind of, even when there was like selling candy bars for Little League or things like that, I was always like excited to go out and do stuff like that. And then it just somehow I was fortunate to just figure out how to save money and I can't say that I'm great at it today, right? I've got kids and family and stuff like that, and expenses and things like that. But we definitely I'm making up for it. If I was a good saver back then, I'm a good spender now. So,
well, again, it's when you start, right? Because if you don't save in the beginning, you never get free. I'm curious, this 102K house, which was your first rental, was that by chance in the Bay Area, or were you somewhere else in the country at that point?
No, I was in the Bay Area, and it's interesting too because back then, like, it was so foreign. Like, when 93, I mean, it was on the internet, but it was like literally, I want to say, like, when I went and looked at to the realtor to look at the house, I was not in the business. I was still I was a landscaper. And I can remember, like, they had dot matrix printers. Everything was like on DOS. They did have MLS, but it was like a bulletin board system. So he printed out a list of like 10 homes, and it was like cutting out in the newspaper back then.
Oh yeah.
But it was local. It was in the Bay Area. It was in Vallejo, California. And at that time, it was interesting because we were in a recession, or in the beginning of a recession, where the base yard was closing. A lot of the bases, military installations were closing. So I got started in a declining market where the bases were closing. Things were softening up. It wasn't a free fall like 2008. But it was a good market. It was in the Bay Area. And it was at that time too, I want to say, like, I underwrote the deal, and I didn't know what underwriting is, but of course now I'm looking at the deal, right? I looked at the deal and I figured out, okay, this thing will break even. And even if I've got to hustle and do a side job here or there, and I have a little bit of reserves, even if it goes empty for a month or two, or I've got to clean it up, or I have bad tenants, I'll figure it out and I'll make it work. Even if I just, by grit is the way I would describe it. I was committed to get on the board and get that property. It's interesting too, because a couple years later, I got into the real estate business as an agent in 94, a year after.
Okay.
And I was pretty successful. But it was interesting, like, I was selling houses in the same neighborhood for like 65, 75 on short sale.
Yeah.
A couple years later, right?
I remember, yeah.
But the rents didn't decline. They maybe declined a little bit, 40, $50. But I was lucky. I just, had a tenant in there that stayed in there a long time, and I just wrote it out. I ended up 1031 exchanging that property, years and years later, but, in the, let's say, $350,000, $400,000 range. But I was able to write out that period. So that's an important piece, I think, for some of the listeners too.
Yeah. So there's actually two things that you just hit on that I want to make sure we cover. We'll hit the first one, which is kind of down markets. You experienced the one as an active investor in I'll call it the mid 90s, which was very local. It only really affected the Bay Area, right? Our local bases were closing, which meant there would be less military people renting from landlords, right? That's what that was. And then 2007 was just a collapse beyond collapse in values. So, let's talk about the downturns, because again, I'm so nervous for all these people who are whiz bang excited that have like 5 years on them. And they've only known, like, frankly, it's been an unusual market, just like straight up. And, I think we can put some caution out there. So what else about that recession in the 90s that you care to share, or maybe the one in 2000, or we can talk about the monster beyond monster in 2007, wherever you want to go.
No, I just think one of the things that just kind of in that time when it was that recession, and then in the mid 90s, I'm 20 something years old. I'm 21. I buy my first property. 22, I become an agent. And then kind of all through my 20s, I just didn't know any better. It just seemed like a really good idea to buy property. And back then I would just like buy one, I just run into something that they weren't great deals either, by the way. They were good deals, but they weren't great deals. They were just deals that kind of made sense. It might be like that deal, $110,000 neighborhood, bought it for 102. Then, the next year and a half later, I found one. It was like maybe, I bought it for 85 and it was in a $95,000 neighborhood. Not a home run, but I had enough of a down payment. And for me back then, it was all about kind of grit, if you will, or just like desire. I just knew, like, hey, I'll get these deals. And of course I had money and I had some reserves and I was smart about it. And I was, had savings and stuff, but I was also knew, like, okay, if I get into these deals and something goes wrong, I'll figure it out. Like, I'll just get in there and I'll paint it myself. I'll put a roof on. I'll fix it myself. I'll do whatever it takes to get through it. And so during the 90s, I was a slow investor where I would just buy one kind of here and there, and not aggressive. And some years I didn't buy any. And then maybe the next year I bought one, and just, by the time I hit 98, 99, I figured out it's like, this is actually a pretty good business. And I didn't have all this positive cash flow, but I had nice equity because I'd owned these for a while, starting to get some pay down. The market came back. It always does.
Yeah.
And then I just got really I figured out like, I need to be more aggressive on this. And, I got on purpose. So that's when I actually started like door knocking for closures and cold calling. I'd always been cold calling, but cold calling specifically to find deals for myself.
Nice.
And, so, even in 2001, this is interesting, but a lot of people forget about this. In 2001, we had 9/11.
Oh, yeah.
So in 9/11, this was interesting because the market was moving pretty well. And in the Bay Area, we had also, they called it dot bomb. All the .com companies on Wall Street fell out. And I want to say that feels like 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that time period.
Yep. For sure.
So we kind of had a little hiccup. It didn't really affect what I was doing because I always work in the lower end, kind of more working class housing. But in 2001, everybody got really scared after 9/11.
Yeah.
And I was really clear at 9/11, like, this is an opportunity. Like, everybody's scared, interest rates are coming down, and I was aggressive. I was buying, and I was flipping. And then I was taking my profits and buying and holding and flipping. And then, buy 2 or 3, flip them, buy 1 to hold, flip 2 or 3, keep 1 to hold, and just rinse and repeat and keep that cycle going. So
very impressive. So we get to 2001, 2002, where you start flipping 2, 3 at a time. How big is the team? Are you still a one-man show, or are you running employees and 1099s, or, what's happening at this point?
So early on, even in like my early years, I had a part-time assistant that would just do like some file work for me, keep the file neat. I'm not very good as an organization. I'm more of a driver, more of an expressive. So 99, 98, 99, 97, my wife is working with me. We're a team. We've got 2 or 3 assistants. She's pretty much running the back end and just letting me, like, I'm a racehorse, man. I'm out the gate. And I just, it's awesome. I get to go. She's running all the back end, the office, dealing with the staff, awesome staff. Everybody's excited. The internet isn't quite like, maybe we were on Blackberries, so we thought we were real hip because we were, right? We had a little typewriter on our phone, we thought we were real hip because we could message each other or something. I kind of remember that. But the internet still, for the most part, was just kind of a bulletin board.
Yeah.
And, we were just, it was such a good time. And I'll tell you, this is interesting. The late 90s and right now, where we're kind of in this lull, like where the market here in the Bay Area started to shift a little bit. Things are contracting a little bit, feels like it's softening. There's a little bit of uncertainty, not a lot, but a little bit of uncertainty. And, I think it's what I would call normalizing. And it's interesting. That was how the 90s were, where it was a little unstable, a little uncertain, but mostly kind of flat and good and solid. And hopefully, it feels like we could be in that. We could be in for another real recession coming, maybe. I think that's very, very possible. Yeah. But it's in these kind of markets, I think, especially because interest rates are so low, that there's a lot of opportunity. So.
Oh, yeah. There's 2 things you said there that I couldn't agree with more. First and foremost, kind of what we're hinting at both is 2020, I think, is going to be one of those years where you just go as an investor. Low interest rates, people are uncertain, people are nervous, owner occupants are not as active, which just means we have more opportunities. And, people got to sell sometimes. And, they can't change timings. When they got to sell, they got to sell.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be pretty cool. So let's go. I'm curious about this. So let's pretend it's 2000. I want to know what you were doing at 2006. So the market's still scorching hot. They're freaking liar loans are everywhere.
Yep.
Everybody says this is going to go on forever because, of course, this time is different. What did your business look like before things went pop?
Man. This is good. This is where the lesson is. And I'll tell you that what I learned during that time, you can't buy it at a workshop, boot camp, business
No.
school, Stanford,
Amen.
Harvard. It's not for sale. It's a multi-million-dollar education. So, and this is the big thing I'll say is that this is so clear to me about staying in your lane
Yeah.
and knowing what you're good at and where your core expertise is, or just where your core competency is. Even if you're, I know there's probably people that have regular W-2 jobs and they're just going to buy some rentals here and there and things like that, which is awesome, by the way. That's the way it should be done. And you have a core focus, a core competency. So 2006, I've got all these properties. I've got a ton of equity. I've got a ton of cash. I've got investors just coming at me. Hey, we want to put money with you. And I'm going out. Hey, I know how to grow money. Come put your money with me. Just everything is going right. And here's what I do. I notice all my friends. I got a couple friends in Las Vegas, and some guys are doing commercial deals. Some guys are doing land development. Some guys are talking about, they're doing some infill development and apartments and condo conversions and, all of this stuff. And I'm like, wow, man, that's where I should go next. I've done this. I've been incredibly successful. Everything in my life has gone perfect up. You know what I mean? Everything's lined up. And I'm like, well, I'm great at real estate. Right? So I get in and I literally leverage up, borrow, leverage up, take a lot of equity that I shouldn't have, stuff I'd owned for a long, long time, and refinance and put stupid loans on them, and literally just leverage up to start going into these. So now it's like part of it is I've got an assembly line process where I'm flipping homes.
Yep.
And then the other part is that I still got all these rentals, and they're good and stuff, but then I'm pulling a lot of that equity and I'm putting them into all these projects. And, man, what a huge mistake. Big apartment buildings, I had a general plan for, I did not have a specific plan. I did entitlement deals. I got the entitlements and stuff. I got the projects finished and entitled, but the problem is that by the time I got them entitled, there was no market. The market from 06 to 08 had just completely crashed. Companies were going out of business. I think everybody knows the story. People, companies, bankruptcies. Everything just completely crashed and burned. And I kind of woke up in 2008, 2009, just sitting in the ashes going, man, what the hell? How did I get myself
How did I end up here?
What happened here? Am I stupid, or is this I should have stayed in my lane.
Yeah.
I was really good at houses.
Yeah. Well, we should just hit that again. There are people today that maybe they've been successful flippers for the last 5 to 8 years, and they're frankly bored, right?
Yep.
Bored with success. And now they're going, you know what? I'm not going to flip anymore. I'm going to go buy apartments in Nashville, Tennessee, because that's what I should be doing. Are you freaking kidding me? We are at least at the top of the market. This is the wrong time to try new things. Would you agree?
Right. Completely agree. And you'll see, that's kind of the hot thing right now is, guys are like, oh, I'm going to go buy. And this is interesting. Let's just say, somebody's got 10, 15, 20, 30 houses, whatever. At my peak, I had about 60 houses. And, okay, yeah, I'm good. I got all these houses. Okay, I've got all these houses. I'm going to go buy a 300-unit apartment building in Atlanta.
Yeah. Where does that come from?
No, I went to the class. Now, don't get me wrong. Now, here's the interesting thing about this, and I'll share it's completely, it's a quick way to lose a lot of money, but also what I would share is that I'm not against growing in that. And this is interesting. This is kind of I think a really important point is that if you are going to get into projects like that, I think a couple of things. One is that I think you get in with somebody you really, really know, like, and trust, and somebody, that person or team of people that they're deep experts in that space. So as an example, now I don't know much about RV parks, mobile home parks, and that. I had a conference call yesterday. I have a friend, a guy I've known for a long time, 15 years. we've never done business, but I know he's super, super gracious, integrity, good guy all the way, knows, good business guy. He owns a park, and he's had a lot of success repositioning it. And so, and he knows a lot of the ins and outs. He took a D property and turned it into like a C plus. Now, number one is his biggest thing is don't buy a D property, buy a C property, right? Or buy a B property and make it a better B property. But anyway, so we're in the conversation of, him and a few other guys. Hey, what if we were to go out and look at and find some RV parks or mobile home parks or, these kinds of projects? That makes sense if you're doing it in that way where you have a very minimal risk, minimal exposure. You know what your max loss is. That makes sense. But for the most part, getting into these deals where it's really easy to get in over your head is a quick way to lose a lot of money. And, I know that firsthand. So
yeah, really what I want to get to this, just to use your earlier example, if you've been very successful, and I think you said you had 30 houses and then you wanted to go off to Atlanta, not picking on Atlanta, it could be any city out there. You need to check yourself because you're going into a new city and a new kind of vertical. You can't assume your flipping knowledge of 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in Vallejo translates to apartments in Atlanta. That's where
Correct.
the leap that people are just going, yeah, I'm a real estate god and everything I touch turns to gold. No, you're not. You're not a god. So I want people to hear that.
Yeah, that's important. I think that's a really important thing. And again, we're not discouraging, but my thought is that if you were to do something like that, you would do it on a scale where, you minimize your risk and like that, but you would do it with people that are really, really experts and people, track record, high trust, all of those things that you would do going into business with somebody else. But it's, I completely agree. It's a mistake. If you're not staying in your lane, you're making a mistake.
Very cool. So before we go to how you got yourself out of the ashes is 08, I want to go back to something you highlighted earlier because I don't want to miss it. You talked about that first house you bought for 102 that you 1031 exchanged for like 300 or 400, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
How important has been the 1031 exchange? Because it's been critical to my journey. And I'm just curious, was that the one time you used it or did you use it a bunch during your career?
No, I've used it a bunch. I used it a bunch. But maybe a bunch is a lot of times I've used it. I would say it was, even for me, I knew it. I knew at that time, and even now I'm very familiar with the 1031 tax codes and the rules. And the rules are pretty simple. But, honestly, I didn't utilize it enough. And I just look at kind of, I would consider myself a quote unquote insider, right? I'm a broker. I do this. I've helped a lot of people do 1031 exchanges. I've done them for myself. And even then, honestly, I think, I probably left a lot of equity asleep in these sleepy little houses. And that probably would have made more sense rather than leverage. See, I had all these houses and I refinanced and leveraged up a bunch of them and then went out and started doing new stuff. When in fact, maybe what I should have done is just kind of the old monopoly idea, right? To just, 1031 exchange 2 or 3 or 4 of them and buy a small apartment building.
Yeah.
And do them in a small scale, like maybe do that once. Okay, get through it, get the apartment stabilized. Okay, great. What did I learn? I went out and bought a 15-unit apartment building. And, I'd never really, I had some duplexes and things like that, small stuff. But mostly a single family landlord most of my career. I go and just literally like, oh, I'm going to buy a 15-unit apartment building. This sounds like a good deal and whatever. And it's right down the street from my office. Now, proximity, right? I'm not buying in Atlanta. Yeah. I'm not buying in, Cleveland or, Texas or whatever. It's a half a mile from my office. And this is an interesting story. So like I buy it, I put cash in, whatever, some seller financing, the deal appears to be really, really good on the surface. And like the minute I take over ownership, like the day it closed, it was like the whole entire building had a party. There was a gate, an operating gate that you had like a remote control or whatever. Yeah. Like the gate got broke like 3 times that first week. It cost me probably like $1,500 in service calls, emergency service calls where I'm getting a call after hours on the weekend, like, hey, I can't get into the complex. And, it's the little old lady that, the one good tenant in there. And I mean, it was a complete nightmare. I had to like evict half of the building. I had to move in a guy that worked for me to move him in there to kind of keep an eye on the place and all of that. And then, I had problems with the seller financing later because the seller passed away. I
Ugh.
didn't really examine the deed of trust. The deed of trust had a balloon in it. They didn't disclose that. I didn't see it. I didn't catch it. So then later I get not a due on sale, but just a balloon on the deal like a year
Yeah.
and a half into it. And I'm like, what? Like, I
Yeah.
don't have, I'm unstable. It's like 2007, 2008. I don't have the cash. I'm like, what the hell? So, I mean, the whole thing was a complete nightmare. Why? Because I just jumped in and I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, again, with the houses, very different
Oh yeah.
from scaling up to apartments and things like that. So,
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. I can tell you the one thing we did right when you were levering up debt wise, we were 1031ing out of houses because they didn't make financial sense into small apartments, right? Our first deal was a house to a 5 units, then a house to a 10. And we went from 8 to 80 in about a 12-month period right before the collapse. So, yeah, we
thanks
got
for
lucky.
telling me now.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Do me a favor, send me your address, and I'll send you my book. It has the whole details of that. So
I love that. And that's smart. And that's interesting because, see, single families got crushed and the multifamily went down a little bit, but
yeah,
you're stabilized because of the rent.
exactly. Yeah, it went down in value, but I don't know about you, but I don't pay my bills off my balance sheet. I pay them off my
Right.
income statement.
Right. Yeah. No. So that's brilliant. Yeah. See, that was the right playbook. And again, I think too, sometimes we just, like you said it so well, is we get bored
Yeah,
thinking like, well, I'm doing houses and I'm good at it. So this is easy and I need to go do something else. And it's like, that's when we start making a lot of mistakes. And especially in a shifting economy,
yeah,
we could, right?
yeah,
We could have a major recession coming. It could be just a little hiccup.
yeah,
It's hard to say. We'll know as we get into this election year and all
yep,
of that, and you'll start to see things transition.
yeah,
Next year will be a transition year, but the last thing you want to do is get out over your skis.
yeah. Yeah, it's time to get small, right? I am very nervous for people in the Bay Area flipping homes, that they're taking out, oh, I got a great deal. I'm going to take out one more piece of inventory. Man, you take on that one extra domino, got high, hard money loans, private money loans. Oh, I've seen it before. So
Yep.
let's rewind to now. It's 2008. You look around. You're in the ashes. I think to use your words, um, you pick yourself up by your bootstraps. I'm sure, and you get cranky because 2010 on has been awesome for folks. So how do you put it back together, rebuild yourself to where you are today, which is very successful.
Absolutely. So, 2008, 2009, I transitioned. Everything was bank foreclosures. So,
Mhm.
I really got just super focused on my main core business of the brokerage and, just getting the income and revenue back up. So, I went out and literally probably, I'd say at least probably 15 to 18 days a month, I was on the road living out of hotels, and I was going to Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, One West Bank, American Home Mortgage. I was out doing the dog and pony show and going and basically calling upon all of the directors and vice presidents and asset managers and going to conferences all geared around the bank foreclosure world. And so again, I got to see kind of behind the curtain, and this is interesting because I learned a lot. This was almost like a learning year. I wasn't really necessarily like rebuilding portfolios, and
Mhm.
I still, had a mop in my hand. And honestly, I still have some personal guarantees and things that I'm still paying today. So it's not like I'm not, I still got a mop in my hand. But I would say that like during that time from like 2008, 9 to like about 2013, 14, probably 2012 especially, I was doing a lot of bank foreclosure work. I was mostly Fannie and Freddie. So I was out getting the business. I scaled up. I had about, depending on the time of the year, but 12 to 18 people working for me. We were doing bank foreclosures from like Sacramento, the foothills, Central Valley, Stockton, San Joaquin County, all 9 Bay Area counties in San Francisco, Oakland Bay Area County, from Vallejo down to San Jose to Marin, Sonoma, all over the place. And we were busy. We were hopping. And one year, 2009, we did 395 deals. And then after that, it was consistently 200 to 300 deals a year
Wow.
of the transactional work. Now, you got to
Yeah.
remember brokerage work, transactional work. But here's the beauty of it. I got to see some companies. This was probably honestly, we didn't make a lot of money, but it was survival.
Mhm.
We made some money, but it was like more survival, keeping everybody working. People that worked for the escrow and title company came over and worked for us as they were getting laid off. And it was good. We were able to survive, in a time when everybody was really going through tough times.
Mhm.
But the interesting thing was I got to see some of these companies that were scaling up. Specifically, the one I was most impressed with. They were all very impressive, but specifically a company called Waypoint
Mm.
Homes,
Yeah.
and based out of Oakland. And it was interesting. I had sold them properties in 2008, 2009. It was just like 2, 3 guys, just kind of with their own money, buying and holding, maybe flipping a little bit, but mostly buying and holding. And they turned this thing into like one of the biggest hedge funds in the country, where, I hear different numbers, so I don't want to misquote it, but like, I think they bought somewhere between like 8 and 12,000 homes in a 5-year period, and they were able to sell it off to a publicly traded company. But they were basically taking single family home portfolios and building them up, the way that like apartment syndicators would, or an
Yeah.
apartment REIT would. And the cool thing was is that I knew, like, had a lot of relationships with guys on the sales floor, so the acquisition guys, and I'd get to go in and see like kind of how this thing had scaled up from just a couple of guys to this, where they had 2 floors of a big building in Oakland. And very, very impressive to see how they scale that. And not that not that I would necessarily want to do something like that, but it was interesting to see in that single family home space, like, I'm going to see one set of clients, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and they're selling, and then I'm going over here to Waypoint, and they're buying, and just watching the dynamics of how these guys scale and how
Yeah.
they were able to put these syndications and these almost like a REIT deal together. Very, very impressive.
Yeah, I remember when the hedge funds finally came to Fresno, right? That's the market I invest in. I remember it vividly because I was picking up a couple a month. I mean, they were everywhere, and they were like literally gold bars sitting on the ground. Like, we'll take anything, any offer accepted, whatever, right? Just big bold letters. And then like one day overnight, things disappeared, and then they were gone the next day, and then they were gone the next day, and then all these relationships I had with REO brokers, they stopped returning my call, and I'm the guy that performed every time, right? I'm like, what the
Yeah.
heck? They're mistreating me. Little do I know, they got a company like Waypoint who's saying, I'll take everything at asking, no contingencies, let's go. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's it. And then the thing too, watching Waypoint, for me, it was like, I still enjoy the brokerage business and I still do it. But right now my business is probably 60-40, 70-30,
Okay.
more heavily weighted toward my own investor, wholesaling, fix flip, partnership deals, whatever, JV, stuff like that. And then the smaller percentage doing brokerage, working, taking traditional listings, working for,
Yeah.
sellers mostly, but buyers too. But watching, Waypoint, and then, even like Invitation Homes and a bunch of the other hedge funds, it really got clear to me that, I got off focus where, you really want to be in business for yourself. And you want to be, I used to say this a lot, and I'm going to start saying it again. I haven't said it in a while, but as a broker, somebody who's out there fighting, scratching, feet on the street, finding deals, really working hard to find opportunities, you also need to be your best client.
Hmm.
You need to be your best client. And that the truth is, there's way more deals than any one person can ever do, or one group or whatever. So,
Yep.
even if I'm buying a deal here or there, or participating in a deal here or there, I'm always going to have a bountiful amount of deals to share and give to other wholesalers or other guys or other investors and things like that. It's just the nature of it. One person, one group, whatever.
Yeah.
No matter how big you are, you're not going to have the appetite or the ability to take that all down. But the key is that to really, to be a principal, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and for people to get in the game. So whether you're agent, broker, loan officer, whatever, working in the industry, to the real estate professionals, I really want to encourage that. A lot of times we get busy working for the client, And the clients are important, very, very important. But we also need to work for ourselves too and find deals for ourselves and build our portfolio.
Yeah. So before we go talking about the future, one question I get asked a lot, and given you are a broker, I'm sure you get asked more than me, is, all right, I'm a newbie at a real estate meetup. I've got the excitement, right? I'm all energetic. I call it the sugar high. And they come up to you and go, should I get my license? What do you say? Or what do you ask?
It depends. It depends on their ambition and what they're going to do with it. If they're just going to buy rentals and if their intention is just to buy some rentals, one rental at a time, build a portfolio, then it doesn't really make sense to do that. If they have an ambition to actually, hey, I've got a big sphere of influence, I got a lot of friends and family. Truthfully, I would rather, for a lot of people, it'd probably make more sense to get a real estate license and work part-time and sell a few houses, one house a quarter versus drive Uber, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people do Uber as a side hustle or deliver DoorDash or, or whatever, like the little side hustle thing. So it just depends on the person and their nature. One thing though, is I'll tell you is that if you are going to get a real estate license, couple things is that you don't need it just to do deals, but also too that you really genuinely need to be a patient person, and you need to be, I would say, a level of empathy, a level of being amiable, and like a good, in a restaurant, a server or a good bartender, or a barista in a coffee shop. You need to have that kind of outward, taking care of people kind of a personality. If you're really an introvert and you can probably do it. Anybody can do anything, but it might be more forced. So, again, it depends on personalities, but even above that, it depends on ambition. What do you want to do with the license? So my answer is yes or no.
Yeah, no, well, that's my answer the same way. For me, it's first question I always ask is why? And if the answer is they think they get some kind of special access to deals and they just want to do deals, well, maybe not the right answer. If it's, I want to help people and, a lot of people, don't know real estate and I want to help people in my circle of influence. Okay. Well, then, makes sense. And, be careful which broker you pick, right? Because you just don't want to be body in the shop. You want to get some mentoring and lessons learned and all of that. So.
Absolutely. And that's a big point, Michael, that align yourself with somebody that you can really learn from and grow. And every city across America, big towns, small towns, there's somebody in your town that is good-hearted, loves to teach, has success, has wisdom, has experience. Maybe they have, some rentals and they know about that, but they also do the sales side. It doesn't mean they have to be hugely successful at one or the other, but somebody who's going to share with you and guide you. I think that's important, that if you are going to get a license and get in the business, align yourself with somebody who can, share with you and mentor you. And also too, I think just with regard to like with the license too, is that, you don't need the license to find deals in that, because the internet, because of like Redfin, and not like I think Redfin's so great, but it's a pretty damn good tool. It's a pretty great tool. Zillow, and then there's numerous others. I think just with the internet access to find stuff and figure out like comps, most of the time I have MLS access. I have an assistant that runs that stuff for me in the background, but usually me on the fly, I'm pulling up Zillow, Redfin,
me too.
Looking at estimates, looking at the solds, looking at the comps. I'm using the public stuff anyway, 90% of the time, to get kind of a snapshot. And then when my assistant gives me the stuff off MLS, I'm just verifying. I'm just
looking for the exception. Yeah, exactly. Very cool. All right, now this is where I get to, this is going to be fun for me. So clearly already a very successful guy on multiple fronts. You've had the experience of a couple of downturns. I am curious, when you look out into the decade of 2020, first off, I can't believe we're about to get into a new decade. How crazy is that? Where do you see taking your business? Have you thought that far about where you want to be and all of that?
I have. So, for me, I like the balance of a 60-40, 70-30, heavily weighted toward the investor, wholesaling, doing my own deals. And I just like that. I'm in a t-shirt right now. I'm in shorts. I went out and looked at a deal today. The old days too, by the way, I used to wear a suit and tie. I still have, custom suits and stuff. And I enjoy putting them on every now and then to go to a conference or something like that. But it's like, I don't want to say it this way, but I just feel like, the dog and pony show, putting on my costume and, going to beg them, please, please list your house with me. Please, please. And then here's the bigger thing too, is I think, because I know there's probably a lot of agents and brokers and people watching this as well. I'm sure, right? Real estate people looking at this. There's a lot of downward pressure on the commissions and fees.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the truth is, it's warranted because most agents, most brokers, with all due respect, probably not the listeners here, most people are kind of doing the bare minimums and not really adding a lot of value or giving a lot of expertise or just giving a lot of extra add value, whether that be hand-holding, empathy, life coaching, let me walk you through the transaction, whatever that is. A lot of people, there's not a lot of that. So there's a lot of downward pressure on the fees. And the thing is that where my frustration has been on the brokerage side is going out, suiting up, going out there and feeling like I have to beg and justify my fees, from a 3% listing commission to a 2% or 2.5% or to a 1% or all the online stuff. And so there's just a lot of downward pressure on it, but I still love helping people. I'm a people person. Yes. I love helping people. And so there's right situations, but ultimately moving forward to the question, I see my business, again, 60-40, 70-30, heavily in the investors. And what I think too now, what I'm looking to do is leverage with partnerships and expertise. So 2 or 3 things where, like my friend Jonathan that I was mentioning owns mobile home parks, things like that. I want to learn more about that so I can add value and help him. And maybe I go out and find some deals for him. So he's teaching me about them, and then maybe I get a little piece of a deal, or, maybe I add some skin in the deal and get a bigger piece, or, that excites me. So part of it is looking at bigger deals, but doing them with people that have a lot of expertise. I would still I have friends that are doing development, infill development, that have had a lot of success with them. And these are not guys that just started doing development, in this last, 18 months, but guys who've been doing it 25 years. Yeah. And so also I want to leverage into those relationships. What can I bring to add value? I'm really good at going out and finding deals. I'm really good at training salespeople. And, I've got a lot of, I've had a lot of good salespeople come through and guys that work with me now. We're good at going out and finding a deal, door knocking, the cold calling, all of that. So if I can bring that to the table with some people that have higher levels of expertise in bigger projects, that's how I'd like to participate in those. And then also on the other side of it is that the younger guys. Yeah. So for me, I hang out with people I'm 48 years old. I hang out with guys in their 50s, 60s, 70s, guys in their 80s. I learn from those guys, wisdom. And I actually listen now. Back then I used to listen and be like, oh yeah, sure. For you, that makes sense. But for me, I'm going to do it this way.
Yeah.
Right? You remember that, Michael?
Oh yeah. I remember.
When we were 20 and 30 and we knew everything?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Right. So now when a guy who's, whatever, it doesn't even have to be older than me. He could be younger than me. But when somebody tells me something that makes some sense, I'm actually listening, So again, I spend time with older guys with expertise, guys that I can add value to. I can bring energy to a deal, maybe help them go out and find stuff. I want to do that. But then also too with the younger guys, or even not even necessarily younger, but newer people that are coming into the business. I love to mentor and share. I used to be a coach for just purely an agent broker system. Guy by the name of Mike Ferry, by also his son, Tom Ferry. Yeah. Coached for them for a number of years. Love that. It doesn't make sense for me to be on a bunch of coaching calls and the money and all that. But now if I can coach people and teach them how to do deals, and we can partner deals and teach them how to generate and find deals, and then now we can partner and I can coach them and help, be the deal surgeon, be the transaction engineer and help them and teach them how to put deals together. That makes sense to me. So going forward into the next decade, 2020 and beyond, it's really leveraging through relationships. It's growing through that. I also like the idea that because of the internet, I have a lot of friends that are virtual wholesaling, and like they might be in California, but they're doing stuff in Texas and South Carolina and Atlanta and all these places. I like the idea of virtual wholesaling, but for me, or just virtual deal making, but to be in the Central Valley. I'd love to do some deals with you in Fresno, in the Central Valley, in Bakersfield, in San Joaquin County, in Los Angeles, in Southern California. So that's that is what I'm doing. Is that's expanding market wise into California, leveraging the expertise, working with people that are, obviously ahead of me and above me on bigger types of projects, adding value to them, and also working with new people and helping them get started and getting into the transaction. So
that's awesome. It's going to be fun to watch and be a part of your journey in 2020. How can people follow you, get a hold of you, learn about your brokerage? Because you have so much to offer. What's the best way to follow and get a hold of you?
So the best way to get a hold of me is to email, and I'll give a couple things. So you can email me at ty@tylg.com. You can call me, text me. My office manager responds a lot of the time, but you can call or text 707-429-8200, 707-429-8200. I am on Instagram, I am on YouTube, I am on Facebook, but honestly, I haven't been on there a lot. I was doing kind of an experiment where I said, I deleted it off my phone.
Yeah.
Let me see how focused and how, specific I am. I am on YouTube watching content. So watching great content like yours and other podcasts and things like that. But I've kind of moved away from the consumer, and I'm realizing now that I need to get on there and start producing content similar to what you're doing in a smaller scale, of course. So, but you can find me on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube as well. So
send your email one more time. It's ty@tylg.com, correct?
Correct.
Excellent, folks. Well, guys, do me a favor. If you're in the Bay Area and you're looking for a brokerage, look him up. If you have questions, he's a great resource. He far exceeded my expectations. And you got to listen to a guy that's been doing this for 25 years, right? He started before me. So much, much respect. Thank you for coming on, Ty.
Thank you, Michael. Great being on the show. Thank you for having me.
You got it.